So we are starting, and let's see others can also join. Hi everyone, good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of our President Yusuf Hashmi and all chapter leaders and board members of ISACA New Delhi chapter, I, Manisha Ghosh, the Vice President of ISACA New Delhi chapter, would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this She Leads Tech event. You all know that we have evolved as a community in ISACA, and in this evolution, we now have a foundation of ISACA which is called One in Tech. One in Tech was formally launched in the spring of 2020. It is led by a volunteer board of directors who are dedicated to advancing ISACA's work, mission, and ensuring strong impact. This ISACA Foundation, One in Tech, it seeks to create a healthy digital world that is not only safe and secure, but most of all, it is accessible for everyone. And in this endeavor, One in Tech is trying to create a better digital world. And how? Firstly, by building understanding. So you all know that ISACA is trying to engage in a conversation about the social and ethical implications of technology, as well as the impacts on public and private sectors. It is trying to grow and diversify the workforce. So ISACA is trying to find ways to help underrepresented groups to enter and succeed in the profession, thereby building professions that reflects the world it serves. Thirdly, it is also trying to increase access and affordability of resources by supporting professionals and organizations that develop and donate solutions and skills to the most vulnerable and at-risk groups. Under the umbrella of One in Tech, we have She Leads Tech, we have Young Leaders in Tech, and we have We Lead Tech. ISACA's She Leads Tech program seeks to increase the representation of women in technology leadership roles and the tech workforce. And how do we do it? We do it by raising awareness. We do it by preparing our She leaders to lead. We do it by building global alliances which go beyond the strategic partnerships in the ISACA network. So with this aim, we are hosting our first She Leads Tech event of this very, very eventful year 2020. This is our first in the series of 2 events that we are having. The first event is today, that is 12th of September, and we will be having a second one on 26th of September this month itself. So with this brief introduction, I would like to hand over the baton to our She Leads Tech Ambassador, Indu Madhavan. Indu, over to you, dear.
Thank you, Manisha. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Very, very welcome to this She Leads Tech event. It's been some time, and it took us some time for us to bring you this event. You know, we waited that things will improve and we will be able to do something in person. It wasn't happening, so we decided that we will do one virtually. As Manisha just gave the preamble, part of the One in Tech, we, the women, would like to, take the baton of She Leads part. And today we bring you the first part of the event. We have 2 speakers, two sessions. The first one is on cybercrimes at corporate world, and the next one is going to be on AI beyond technology. So very quickly, we bring you the first session, that is by Neha Taneja and Sara Deori. Neha and Sara will talk to us about the cybercrimes that they see that's becoming more and more rampant in the corporate world under the current the world of the pandemic. The world has completely changed for all of us. It has almost become a pre-pandemic and pre-COVID and post-COVID lives are very, very different. So is the corporate world seeing enormous number of challenges in addition to the business. The level of crime and the type of crime that's committed has been quite remarkable. It's been changing, and it's a very, very important factor for everyone to consider and reckon with. So here we have Neha and Sarah, who's going to talk to us about it. Neha has a huge experience of over 20 years. She's been, just quickly introducing the two of them. She has been the leader of, she's a cybersecurity leader of at Cairn. Right now, before Cairn, she was working with SBI Cards as the, again, the information security lead. She is being, sorry. Yeah, she was with SBI Cards as Vice President IT Controllership. She was before that a consultant with KPMG and TCS. Neha is a CISA CISM. You should be able to see the entire list of qualifications, certifications that she has. Extremely equipped with all this information security certifications and knowledge that she needs to do her job. She will be supported by Sarah Deori, also her colleague at Cairn. Sarah also comes with a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge in the cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance domain. Sarah holds CISA and ISO 27000 and the 22301 lead auditor and lead implementer certifications. Also, trying to qualify for CSIM and CRISC. So there we are. Without any more ado, over to you, Neha and Sarah.
Thanks for having us here and giving us this opportunity to share our views. So without much ado, I'll move on to the agenda for today's session. So just wanted to check, would the screen, I have to do the screen sharing, or the presentation would be, I've shared it with you, so you would be projecting it?
You would be able to share it. Do you have the rights?
No, it's disabled for me. That's why I had shared the presentation. So if you could, bring it up, I can move on to the agenda.
Prerna?
Right, Neha. So I will stop sharing it, and you can further share your screen.
Sure.
Before proceeding, I would just say the rules for the CP session today. So that is something very important for everyone. So maximum 3 CPs will be credited basis number of hours participant has joined in the session. So the login into the session till the end is required by each participant, and we'll be having Q&A sessions in between the sessions for 5 minutes. If there is any queries, users can ask their queries by writing in the chat box, or they can raise their hands during the Q&A session also. And the presentation deck will be posted on ISACA New Delhi chapter portal. Recorded video will also be published on our ISACA New Delhi chapter YouTube channel. At the end of the session, we'll be sharing a feedback form to take your views on the session. So we are good to go, I think. Neha, over to you. I'm stopping sharing the screen, and you can further share your deck.
As of now, I'm not able to share. It shows host does not have host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, Neha, allow me some time.
Prerna, if we have the presentation, can you share it from your screen?
Yes, Manisha, I'm that. Sushma is having the presentation, so I'm asking Sushma to do so.
And there is a slight echo in your voice, Prerna.
Let me check, Manisha. presentation.
Prerna, just give access of host to the speaker, please.
Neha, could you check if I've just given the access to share the screen? Could you check if I've got the
Yes.
access to share?
Yes.
Share it now.
So can you see my screen?
Yes, Neha.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. Without further ado, let me first, briefly explain the agenda for today. So we are going to, our intent here is to cover the latest cybercrime trends, which we have seen in the past couple of months due to, especially due to the pandemic. What is the nature of threats which has been rising? And as of all of us are familiar with the certain kinds of cybercrime such as ransomware and the spear phishing, but the prominence which they have gained in the COVID lockdown, post-lockdown. So that is one of the main themes which we'll be touching upon. And other than the trending cyber attacks, one is around what, as organizations and as individuals, we can look for specifically from the angle of protecting ourselves. So on the cybercrime front, if we were to broadly classify, what I can see is that there are around, so if we have done a broad classification, while I'll be deep diving into few categories such as the cyber espionage category and the double extortion. But let me briefly touch upon the cybercrime categories which we have, mentioned over here. So if you look at it, certain sectors are more prone to types of fraud such as identity fraud, and especially, organizations in the NBFC sector dealing with customer sensitive PII data. So it's more like, there's a threat around stealing the identity of somebody and then, using it for your own personal benefit and personal financial gain. So that is one of the major categories of, cyber crimes, which has been there for quite some time and is specially targeted around sensitive PII information. And when the in the post lockdown era, there has been a lot of traction with respect to prominence with respect to this particular area also. Then there are few categories which are recent, such as cyber extortion, in terms of a double cyber extortion, which I'll explain as we go further. So ransomware is one category which has been there for quite some time. But having said that, there is a new element of double extortion using ransomware, which we will touch upon as we go further. Cyber espionage has, because of the social distancing and the constraints imposed because of the COVID situation, the global pandemic, what we have seen as a trend is that the cyber espionage category has, from the traditional espionage, the focus has more shifted to the cyber espionage using various advanced techniques such as APT, and which we will touch upon as we go further. And then, email and internet fraud, these are again, they have been there, and these also become a sub factor in propagating serious attacks such as cyber espionage and, theft of financial information. So they become, they are a part into, propagating the overall advanced attacks, I would say. So these are some of the news items which gained prominence for the last couple of months. If we could see that like malwares, because of the corona pandemic, there has been a lot of scare factor, and there have been false communications to users, and inadvertently users ended up clicking on those emails spreading propaganda about corona vaccines, or details about corona counts and all. So even for that matter, there were countless issues pertaining to users falling in prey with respect to the coronavirus information advisory. So these are some of the news items which gained prominence. And if you look at it now, the attacking part is it has become so convenient that there are certain APT groups which offer hack for hire services. Then ransomware as a service is available on dark web. So these are some of the nuances and the problems which we are dealing with. So coming back to this is in reference to the initial slide wherein we mentioned about cyber extortion. And so this is a new thing in terms of the double extortion works on the premise of that before the ransomware attack surfaces, there is a data exfiltration from the organization already without the victim being aware, and that data could be is sensitive in nature. Now double extortion becomes a double-edged sword, because what happens is, and so the context here is, the example here is Allied Universal in 2019 November. So what happened is that they were hit by a ransomware by the name of Maze, and when they refused to pay the ransom, their personal data was sensitive data was leaked. So the ransom asked was 300 bitcoins, but because of the refusal, so this became a double-edged sword. So if you pay, you are not sure you're going to get the decryption key, and if you don't pay, there is the second component comes into play, wherein your information will become public. It will become available in the public domain. And this has far-reaching implications if, for example, consider organizations which are in the sector, financial services sector. So there are a lot of regulations such as GDPR and privacy regulations which come into play, and the incident management part around it. So the legal ramifications will be far more serious if that kind of if an organization has to deal with that kind of breach, wherein the organization is hit by a ransomware, and if they do refuse to pay, the sensitive data becomes available in the public domain. So there, for example, in Indian context, there is a RBI NBFC circular which was issued in June 2019. So that even specifies a format in which such cyber incidents need to be reported to the regulator, and then what are the ramifications in terms of informing to the person whose data has been leaked, or the organization whose data has been leaked. So this is a very serious attack category, crime category, because it is a combination of two areas, where one is that having hold of the sensitive data, and second part is the ransomware. So as of now, this, though this is a recent addition to the categories, but we do foresee that this is going to rise going forward. Then this is about advanced persistent threat, the cyber espionage part, which I mentioned briefly in the initial slide. So what is happening over here is, before because of the pandemic, this has actually somehow gained a lot of focus now and lot of prominence, because this is becoming an easy way to carry on such activities. So I'll just briefly touch upon how this attack operates, and then there are few groups which I have mentioned in the previous slide, which wherein I'll explain their objectives briefly. So the problem with advanced persistent threat is, as the NOTME suggests, advanced and persistent. Advanced is going to use a combination of attack, combination of attack techniques. So it could be a combination through a phishing, a ransomware is propagated in the organization. So that is why we say, and then advanced persistent threat mostly try to use zero-day exploits also. Advanced that is the point where advance is coming from. And persistent is because there is a lot of lag at times when the organization actually becomes aware of that there is a advanced persistent threat that is impacting the organization. And the typical technique which the typical methodology which is applied for this is, first of all, is the target that initial infiltration. And initial infiltration, the objective at this stage is that somehow getting to the kind of getting to the network of the organization and get a backdoor, so that the backdoor helps the connectivity to a remote command and control kind of stealth operations. Once the attacker gains the foothold, then there is privilege escalation, and the attacker may move on laterally through the network, gathering sensitive data, sensitive files, personal records. And once a substantial amount of data has been collected, then there will be extraction. And during extraction phase, there the way will be that create some genuine attack wherein the cybersecurity team and so basically to mislead, that is the white noise technique, we can say, we can classify it as. And by that time the organization is responding to that particular attack, so exfiltrate the data. So that is how briefly I have tried to cover that what is the standard way in which APT works. And here if you look at it, so some of the groups which I have mentioned, these are very vicious in terms of their their visibility, and they have been there for some time. So if you look at Iranian linked hackers, so a case in point is when they targeted a pharma in US, which is Gilead, which is searching for a COVID vaccine. So the objective over here presently, because of the pandemic, the objective of these APT groups has also become very, very focused on targeting organizations which are into COVID research, or which are into, finding the vaccine, or so such impacted areas. And then one trend which we saw also is that during this, especially the lockdown, cyber attacks originating from China towards India. So from that geolocation perspective also, there was a marked increase in that particular trend. Then, so these are the notorious groups. I would just like to briefly maybe, mention Dark Hotel APT. So if, as the name suggests, this group was particularly, so they would profile the people they want to target specifically. And this was especially the luxury hotels segment. So I think as of now for APT, again, this is something as a trend which has picked up, and because of the nature of operations we are in right now, we think that this as a trend is going to go up. So deepfakes are a subcategory of social engineering. It's more like, so, there have been instances when you have received calls, when you can receive calls from your supervisor, but actually it is not your supervisor, and instructing you to maybe make payment to a particular supplier without, email approvals. So, so it is more like the level of machine learning and, intelligence gathering in this field is so advanced that a social engineering message using the voice and the video techniques would most probably, victims would fall prey to it because of the way it seems so authentic. So if you have a video of, so for example, Donald Trump mentioning something, and it may not be a genuine video. So, and these things evolve. So if you notice in these videos, one of the things you may see that, okay, the eyes are not, the person is not blinking the eyes. But then as attackers evolve, they keep on addressing the nuances, and this keeps on getting mature and mature. So this is again another trend which has to be watched out for. So what is happening is, if you look at it, the Twitter attack, especially this year, so it targeted very high profile people such as Elon Musk, and the kind of people it targeted. So what has happened is it created another panic situation wherein many CEOs kind of deleted their social media account. As I've mentioned, 48%. So the source of this number is Gartner. Having said that, again, the Twitter attack worked on the premise of that you tend to believe when you see something on account of such people. If you see a message coming from high profile people, you are likely to be believing that this message is genuine, and kind of with that belief you may end up doing. In this particular case, there was a you mention of Bitcoin for, if you transfer X Bitcoins, I'll transfer 2X. So those messages seem very genuine, and that is again, the trend which we see, that there would be more and more of such personalized attacks which are going to become which are going to come at the forefront. So this is in continuation of the personalization part, in which the Twitter attack this year, especially, it is not only these accounts which are mentioned there. This attack spread to other organizations as well, and at least accounts of 130 people had been compromised, and this used a combination of, again, social engineering. So basically, as of now, you can see that all attacks, there is a lot of personalization element involved. Then in the personalization element also, there is a lot of maturity in terms of presenting it as a genuine request. So the deep fakes and the spear phishing, if you look at it in combination, they become a very malicious and a very dangerous attack to deal with. So with the as of now, this is a point which all organizations have to deal with, and all organizations are facing, because as we go remote and as there was need for quick scalability, so many organizations, there was a lot of technology landscape change with respect to cloud usage as well. And if you look at it, in the cloud model, there is a lot of onus on the organization also to kind of configure certain, security checkpoints. So if there have been famous data breaches earlier in the cloud also, like this one, LinkedIn and Sony, they are pretty old breaches, but Capital One, wherein data of 100 million people was leaked, was through a security misconfiguration only pertaining to like authentication and access authorization. So even basic at times there are basic configuration misses, such as logging, authorization, and timely patching. So those things become a very become a reason or become a factor in this cloud threat being exploited so easily. And the latest trend which is happening right now is that so there are two examples which I have mentioned over here. So recently, a French cloud service provider was hacked, and in this case, 30 terabytes of information was encrypted using the name of the ransomware is Doppelpaymer. So it is this particular trend on targeting cloud service provider has again increased. And then the other way which is happening is that at times sites like GitHub, Gmail, and Alibaba, these are the sites which which are kind of delivering those payloads. So that is how the basically the usage of cloud infrastructure needs to be focused on in terms of one, overall cloud security strategy for the organization. Secondly, in terms of configuration, the periodicity and the regularity of the reviews and the patching part of it. And definitely the monitoring metrics, what are we trying to monitor in terms of access, authorization, and usage. So those are some of the key nuances which have to be taken into account for cloud threats specifically. This again as a trend has picked up because during the lockdown, I mean, many people kind of ended up downloading a lot of applications from the Play Store, and these seemingly, you know, there were some applications as simple as applications for hobbies, and some were designed for children. So these applications initially, you know, seemingly very harmless. These are the ones through which, you know, mobile devices were infected. If you look at the numbers over here, then you can see that, you know, Hacken so far is available in 8 applications and has been downloaded 50,000 times. So this has happened because one thing is that while working from home, and again, you know, during lockdown, the usage of the mobile devices increased substantially. And second thing is, then you know, we can again tend to have belief that what we are downloading from Google Play is bound to be secure, which necessarily may not be the case, because even attackers have also advanced their mechanisms, and they may also obfuscate the application in that manner that, you know, even Google Play and sites like even VirusTotal may not be able to detect that this application is malicious. So these are some of the trends which we have, you know, summarized basis the pattern which we have seen, and the other, you know, research documents and sites which we have referred to. So having said that, there are a couple of elements which, you know, organizations can take care of to you know, cope with these, while the amount of these, the quantum of these is going to increase seemingly. But there are some things which, you know, as an organization, we you know, we can take care of, and which definitely should address all the 3 elements, which when we talk of processes, that would be primarily that, you know, these are the foundation elements. So having a ISMS, if you have to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley, those kind of compliances in place with respect to financial reporting. Then with respect to the technology part, how mature your SIM and SOC operations are, what kind of IPS technology do you you know, have. And then again, from the people perspective, at times, you know, awareness training is not just one awareness week. There has to be resiliency and you know, periodicity with respect to that also, because when the types of attack nature and the you know, techniques of attack change, so does the training content, and the information that has to be disseminated to employees has to change. Initial phishing attacks used to be very simple, but today you see a component of phishing and those kind of things. So the team needs to be, the organization and the employees need to be made aware of that on a periodic basis. So as like what I'm trying to explain over here is that overall cybersecurity maturity assessment, if you know, if I were to compare maybe 10 years back, 10-12 years back, when there was when we used to carry out IT general controls testing, there used to be a section on program development, which used to check for new systems addition and acquisition kind of. And at that point in time, it was a very different scenario, wherein that section used to be mostly not applicable for that particular financial year. But now if you look at it, the kind of that has changed in entirety. So while, you know, when you assess your cybersecurity, when an organization assesses their cybersecurity assessment coverage, so while the traditional part of, you know, the infrastructure and the business applications, these two are the areas which need to be covered, but a third dimension wherein, you know, specifically for the landscape changes in IT, in terms of, you know, if you are adopting new technologies, if you know, this is like adoption of RPA, or if you're going for you know, cloud strategy. Sorry, was there any question?
No, Neha, I think someone was unmuted, so I request everyone to be on mute, please. Please continue, Neha.
Yeah. So what I was emphasizing is that while we as organizations we should focus on the strategy of the traditional foundation elements of securing and the business applications like the traditional IT general controls, access management, change management. There has to be and then the infrastructure wherein configuration reviews, your network perimeter defense, your EDR comes into play. But having said that, there has to be a more emphasis on the new technology introduction and the new services category, especially when with respect to now that there is a lot of remote work being done remotely. So with respect to remote access, how mature the organization is. Yeah, and then with respect to onboarding of new third parties, and then there are various legal considerations which also should be there when you assess changes to the your organization's technology landscape. For example, if you're moving data to the cloud, is that kind of data allowed by from legal perspective? Is there any data localization clause applicable to it? For example, that kind of clause is applicable to NBFCs, the sensitive PI and the PI part. So basically one thing is that have your assessments, your audits and everything, but there has to be the frequency of evaluating in entirety the landscape change. There has to be more emphasis on that, because as of now our way of working has completely changed. So we are primarily, most of us are remote. Then we do onboard third parties, and then the third thing here is that cloud services, there is more and more adoption. And having said that, the resiliency, overall resiliency of your cybersecurity strategy, that has to be periodically evaluated. Look for signs from your SOC and SIM setup, and that will give you a clear indication where you want to focus on in terms of areas for your respective organization. So one is that have a holistic framework which spans across the IT applications, as in the previous slide, the infrastructure, the network, and third, the most important element is in holistically changes to the IT landscape, and it shouldn't be once in a year kind of activity. The third element has to be done at a relatively higher frequency, because the technology landscape is changing. So the security element, the assessment element of impact on the access controls, of impact on remote access, of impact on cloud, so those things need to be assessed regularly as compared to traditional yearly cybersecurity assessments. And if to get a direction sense, over here I'm just mentioning some specific metrics. If you look at it, these are some examples. If you look at this kind of data for your organization, it will give you the direction sense of which area to prioritize. For example, you look at it, delayed patching, which is one of the primary reasons for all those attacks surfacing. Then the SOC SIM correlation data, for example, I could you would come to know that the example I gave earlier about increasing attacks from China. So you would come to know for your specific organization, do you see any kind of repetition, any kind of issues resurfacing again and again from the remote locations? Then when you have a look at these metrics, and that kind of gives you the posture in terms of where you stand and what are the things which from threat management perspective you need to focus on. So right now, if you look at it, there is a lot of focus around SOAR and automation of incidents identified. So if there is a malicious IP identified, automatically it should be blocked by the organization using the SOAR component. So that kind of automation level, you have to see which use cases you can achieve that for, which are the metrics you want to further strive to improve. And having said that, again, throughout my years of experience, I have noticed that patching lag is one of the main reasons, I would say, that causes a lot of problems in various organizations. And to conclude, a simple example: whenever you consider implementing any particular control point or additional enhancement in your organization, consider it in entirety. So here what I've tried to demonstrate is that if it's a remote user access management, so for example, if you have a setup which, equipment manufacturer needs to access remotely, so the controls you would put in place need to be emphasized right from the point that what will be allowed in terms of access. Will there be multi-factor authentication? What is the NDA you have signed with that particular third party? Having said that, what are the kind of, will this access be through VPN, how this access will be? And then having said that, what kind of monitoring you want to have with respect to remote access sessions. Some organizations may even have recordings of screen recordings of those sessions. So it depends on the nature of your organization and the vertical of your organization. And having said that, have all these controls in place, there has to be a way wherein you test your effectiveness, that in case an incident happens, how do you go about the dealing with the resiliency part of it and coming out of it, and including the report out from the legal standpoint. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm reiterating, if you are in NBFC, there are certain compliances which with respect to RBI incident report out need to be done periodically. So evaluate everything from end to end as a life cycle whenever there is a control and a process improvement area which you want to focus on. So that's it from my end in terms of whatever trends we have seen and what we feel we can do about it. So thanks everyone for joining in.
So much, Neha, for such an enriching session. Requesting everyone, if you have any queries or questions, you can ask. We can take up those questions with Neha.
Yeah, hi Neha, this is Priyanka. A quick question actually with regards to patch management. What are the general standards as per industry best practice? What should be a timeline for a critical patch, to be applied within the corporate network? What do you suggest?
See, I won't say that it is industry standard. You define it in context of your own organization and vertical. But for critical, critical patches, if there is a, for example, announcement by Microsoft, then and there's a serious vulnerability announced, you may go take an exception route and patch it than waiting for your standard timelines to kick in, the 10, 15, and whatever days you haven't defined.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.
So to add on to that, as with an example, when I mentioned about the zero-day exploits, so they are one of the main areas which are being used as of now to perpetuate the attacks.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree to it. And that's the reason that I was asking the question, because what we have seen quite recently, that the third parties that we are recruiting are not abiding by the standards that our organization has set up. So that's the reason that, I was looking into a industry best practice or maybe a timeline as to what are the general practices. For example, in PCI, I know that, they have 25 or 30 days of time that they have for a critical patch to be applied. So just on that. Thanks a lot.
In some cases that 25 to 30 may become very, delayed. So that's, and regarding this third party, as I briefly touched upon it, most of the time, the non-compliances are unfortunately happening at the end of the third parties, which the organization ends up engaging in, because they may not follow all the organization policies, even if you have documented them in the SOW. So it is very, it is very required that at that particular end, other than periodic, increasing vigilance to periodic audits, there has to be some stringent mechanism for enforcing those controls other than just mentioning it in the SOW.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks a lot.
Neha, we have one more question. Someone is asking how we measure effectiveness effectiveness of our security measures.
Sorry, come again.
How we can measure effectiveness of our security measures. I guess he's talking about the security controls, I think. How we can measure effectiveness of our security controls.
So if you look at it, I had touched upon a couple of metrics in one of the slides, right? So you will have to so first of all, if there is a framework you're following for, and I believe most organizations have that level of maturity now in terms of following ISMS framework. And one is the ISMS framework, and the second component is your sector specific detail. So when you assess your, maturity, you will have to define metrics such as simple, from ranging from simple metrics, which are straightforward in terms of, the number of levers whose access was revoked within time frame as defined by the organization, to metrics such as how many, what kind of incidents were raised by SOC and what was their mean time to resolution. So these kind of metrics would give you a trend of, how your security posture is, and that has to be defined across various areas for patching, for for SOC effectiveness, for IT general controls effectiveness, like number of unauthorized changes that happened. So those kind of things have to be defined area wise. Then only you would be able to get a picture and visibility of where you stand. Hope that clarifies.
Right, thank you, Neha. Okay, there's another question. Any latest development in protecting the system against DNS poisoning?
So I won't have a upfront answer to the specific category which you mentioned. But having said that, when I say combination of the elements which I showed in my framework, those should help you deal with that. Like with respect to timely patching, with respect to the perimeter defenses. So a combination of all those control elements should help you deal with that.
Right, okay, thank you. So any other questions from the participants? I would say that this was very enriching session in terms of the cyber attacks in current situation, that is new normal. Neha, another question which just popped up, that during the COVID-19 situation, in fact, I was also just talking about this COVID-19 situation where people are working from home. How effectively can an organization control cybersecurity measures? What would be a more practical way to keep on top of the monitoring mechanism?
See,
This is a very common concern, I think, in most of the organizations.
Because the remote access kind of the usage has increased.
Right.
Yeah, so two parts to it. One is remote access for your own employees, which most organizations generally end up controlling pretty well. The second component which needs to be focused on is again, which I touched upon briefly, is remote access with respect to third parties. So whether that multi-factor authentication which you have put in place, and then those remote accesses, are there formal provisioning processes around it? Are there formal review processes around it? And is there audit logging happening for that? So all these elements need to be emphasized on compared to before, because now most of the organizations plan to continue working remotely in the current scheme of things.
Right. Have any other question from anyone? A very interesting question, Neha, for you. Top 5 security predictions.
So I think that was the crux of the presentation in terms of, but I'll summarize from that where I feel, one is that the double extortion thing, which I feel the ransomware usage, and then the espionage category increasing. Phishing is here to stay for sure. It has been there for quite some time. And especially the targeted phishing. So, with respect to, I think newer threats would emerge with respect to the cloud and the remote access part.
Right, perfect. So if there are any other questions, people please hurry up as we have a break.